So I'm recording this for two reasons. I know normally I would have some sort of audio to go with this, but I'm not playing a game, so no audio to go with it. And also, I tried syncing up a game earlier called Chill With You Lo-Fi Stories, so I could play some lo-fi music. It wouldn't work, so there goes that idea. I could probably search something up on Spotify, but I'll probably do that the next time I make one of these, um, which will most likely be later tonight. So this video is for two reasons. One, so I could show my a friend of mine who's watching some of my videos with me what exactly my schedule is like. And two, more the schedule that I impose on myself because I have nothing else to really do with my life besides this. The other part is to show how I a story I'm working on, or a couple stories, and how I work on them. So, if you could see to the left, this is a list of all the games that I have currently have planned for uploading to YouTube. As you can see, we have Metaphor Refundation, Boshonomics walkthrough. We have the Persona 5 Royal walkthrough, Cassette Beasts, and Liza P. Now, you may also realize that I have Persona 3 Reload down in the second section instead of up here. The reason why I have it that way is because I intend to do another playthrough of Persona 3 Reload where I get everything done at once, kind of like what I'm doing with Persona 5, except that, like I said, it says AU here. The reason why is because the stories I'm working on, I plan to make AUs of them at some point just to pass the time. And as you can see, Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5. If you want to know what the names are, those are the names of the main characters for each story. Uh, for the story that Persona 3 is an AU of, that would be Adam Castaros. For Persona 4, that would be Kalos Hollow. Persona 5, Dante Vale. If you know me from so on Discord, I go by Jinzo. I go by Jinzo too now, but I used to go by Jinzo. And if you had been on the Castle of Flowers RP group, Dante Vale will be a name that you recognize because that was one of the characters I played. And it was one of the first times I had ever written a character, and I never gave him a proper story. Well, now I'm giving him a proper story. But back to my schedule, or rather my walkthrough collection. We have Metaphor Refantasio, all these. Then once I get these done, Persona 5 Royal is a bit iffy, but mainly these four, and then the current Persona 3 Reload walkthrough are Let's Play I'm doing. Once I get those done, I'll start on this section, which is I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, Persona 4, technically Persona 4 Golden, Hogwarts Legacy, Persona 3 Reload AU, and Digimon's Story Time Stranger. Now, I have a lot of games as you can see, in fact, I have way more games which I have hidden away because I'm probably not going to play them. And as you can also see, oh, I did just realized what was in the corner. But another part is that there are games on this YouTube recording list that are games that I plan on buying at a later date after I finish this section. So the way it works is for most of this list, for every 10 uh, Let's Plays I do, I buy 5 games for the next set of Let's Plays. This one's 6, but there's a reason for that. The reason there's 6 is because I really want to play Persona 6, and I think it'll come out before I finish this section. So, Monster Hunter Stories, Sword Art Online Sword Art Online, Monster Hunter Wilds. I've been wanting to play that for a while. Didn't get the chance to because there was the whole problem with PC not given like the same care as console. Obscure Expedition 33, Persona 4 Revival, which I am very excited for, and then Persona 6, which, if it does not come out when I think it does, I may actually, like, hit myself with a pillow. I'm not going to do anything too drastic. Then the next set of games, Monster Hunter Stories 2. These games, I had to emulate, but I own copies of. There's no digital copies of them. So I had to emulate these. That would be Devil Survivor Overclocked, Devil Survivor 2 Record Breaker, SMT Strange Journey Redux, SMT4, and SMT4 Apocalypse. Now, the reason I had to do that is because if we go back over to my AU project, we have Devil Survivor Overclocked, Devil Survivor 2 Record Breaker, Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey, SMT4, SMT4 Apocalypse, and last one is Conception 2, but there is actually a digital version of that game, so I have already bought that. Then after that, we have Digimon Cyber Sleuth, Hacker's Memory, and Survive, which I think are also on the Yep. And then, well, get into that later. Monster Hunter Stories 3. Solo Leveling Arise Override, which is also another AEO I wish to do. Sword Art Online Re-Hollow Fragment. And then Cuisinier and Persona 3 The Answer. Monster Hunter Rise. SMT5. SMT5 Vengeance. Yes, I have SMT5 Vengeance. What this means basically is we're gonna do the canon of fuck, I forget what it's called. The Vengeance timeline and the normal timeline. Cult of the Lamb, Marvel's Midnight Suns, Persona 5 Strikers, Persona 5 Tactissa, Persona 3 Portable. Yes, I have a lot of Persona games on here. Baldur's Gate 3, Monster Hunter World, Shape of Dreams, SAO Lost Song, The Greatest Villainous Strategy of Lily, Freedom Wars Remastered, Echoes of Aincrad, SM23 Nocturne, The Altars, Pathfinder Kingmaker, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, Inscription, Dispatch, Hades, Going Under, Fantasian Neo Dimension, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, Mega Man Battle Network, Mega Man Battle Network 2, Mega Man Battle Network 3 Blue, 3 White, Monster Prom, Octopath Traveler, Accelerator World versus SAO, Hades 2, 100 Line Last Defense Academy, Stupid Never Dies. Now you may be asking, well, won't completing the games like Monster Hunter and Baldur's Gate and the Pathfinder games be really long? So, my plan is that when it comes to games like Monster Hunter, like the Monster Hunter World, Rise, and Wild games, or what I plan to do is, due to them basically being open world, I will be doing mostly the main story, some side quests, but basically the bare minimum of what I need to do, and I'll complete the achievements at a later time. For games like Baldur's Gate 3 or Pathfinder, I will think up a specific plot that I want to do, or specific choices I want to do, and then plan it out that way. We will only be doing one run, and that's it. The reason why is because you can sink hundreds of hours into these games and still have stuff to do, but it gets repetitive after a while. Same with SMT5 and SMT5 Vengeance, where I'm going to choose which paths we go down, and that'll be that. So, having rambled on about that for the past 12, almost 13 minutes, let's get into the meat and potatoes, shall we? So, first off, AU. I just want to get this off my chest. As you can see, I have a bunch of AU stuff I want to do with my characters, and if you can see right here, Conception 2, rewrite, not an AU. The reason why? I've played Conception 2 before, and there are certain things in this game that make me very uncomfortable. It's technically kid-friendly in the fact that it's not rated M. The problem is that there's a lot of stuff in this game that's basically an allegory for sex that makes me very uncomfortable. But it's better for me to record it and be uncomfy than to like record it but not put it on YouTube. Now, Strange Journey. I'll explain the YouTuber AU stuff in a little bit, but um, ooh, we also have Cyber Sleuth AU, Hacker's Memory AU, Survive AU, and then we have 3 AUs where the characters are inspired by Kamen Rider. Fun fact, Kalos, his world is actually very inspired by Kamen Rider, Ruby, a lot of tokusatsu stuff, but more specifically superhero tokusatsu, like Kamen Rider. Your got your Kamen Riders, your Super Sentai, your Power Rangers was just basically American Super Sentai. Your Ultraman, stuff like that. But yes, So for Adam, he will be an ever after high with powers inspired by Kamen Rider Saber. The reason why is because Adam is in a story that deals a lot with mythology, and it's basically a ripoff Percy Jackson. I am not going to be not like dishonest about it. I really liked Percy Jackson, and I was like, hey, I want to make a character that's kind of like Percy Jackson, but we make him autistic and give him more trauma. Is it a bad thing that I think the best way to make your characters develop is to give them like heaps and heaps of trauma? Probably. Uh, oh, this one's gonna be fun to explain. So for this AU, I went and I threw around a couple things, and eventually, just because of the hilarity of it, I decided why don't we throw Dante's characters with Kamen Rider Zero One inspired abilities into a Monster Girl Encyclopedia world. If you are under the age of 18 and you don't know what that is, don't look it up. If you're above the age of 18 and you don't know what it is, let's wait for the non 18-year-olds to leave. Please leave because I don't want to traumatize you. All right, I can no longer be held accountable. It's basically if you took all the mythology and like fantasy stuff in the world and you made them into hot anime girls, except they're horny. Is this a bit depraved? Possibly. More than likely. Would it be hilarious for Dante to essentially be stuck in a world that wants to jump him even though he's gay? Yes, also hilarious. Then we have some AUs of Pokemon fan games. And now we get into the fun bit. So, the way I'm doing these AUs is I'm not writing them. Well, I am writing them, but I'm not going to just write them out. What they are is basically a character watches uh different versions of themselves type of story, right? I know those are overdone, but I like them. They're fun. And as a sort of breather between the different AUs, my plan is a YouTuber AU. I really need to fully decide a name for Kalis. I wanted to be Ashford or Hollow. Okay. So so Kalis, Dante, Adam, then Dante's boyfriend Steve, then Augustine, and then somebody else to represent well it'd have to be Kalas's nephew, because that's kind of the whole point. I haven't thought everything out yet, as you could tell. But basically, each of these people have their own like channel and what they do. Like Kalos, for example, does multi player gaming. He occasionally does story games, but usually he leaves that to Adam, who does video game challenges and single player games. Dante does educational content, more specifically, hunting and surviving. The nephew would do assortment content. Basically, he is a small, precious bean, and by the time I write this out, I am hoping that I create a character that would have several people wanting to commit murder of an entire country for the small child. I'm sorry, that's one of my favorite like tropes of the internet, I guess. It's weird. I know. For Steve, because he is an effing diva, and the way I wrote him was like this was back in 2020 when like I didn't fully understand that gay people could actually be real people instead of just stereotypes. And he wasn't necessarily a gay stereotype, but dear God in heaven, the way I wrote him was terrible. But yeah, he does cosplay, bits, music videos, stuff like that. And then for Augustine, who is Adam's boyfriend slash, oh, hold on, does a boyfriend count as a boy toy? Huh. Okay. Adam's boyfriend slash best friend. He does conspiracy theories. Well, not just conspiracy theories, just like theories about different shows. Think like game theory, but like before Matt Pat left. I'm a 100% be honest here. I like the new host for the theory channels, but Matt Pat did it better in some areas, I think. Although that could be me being biased. Okay, what's next on the agenda? Because I think I have you for like like an hour more. Because I'm gonna be recording this for 2 hours, and then I'm gonna be recording another video, kind of like this, but with a different story, maybe for another 2 hours. Um, yeah, let's just get into Dante's world. So I haven't really a title for this, but this kind of combines some of the backstory I have with Dante and so loosely references some stuff from Castle of Flowers, and I do mean loosely. So the basic concept is that in 1970, basically it takes place in a world similar to our own. Instead, however, in 1978, disease was starting to affect children born to parents who were working with a new metal discovered after a world-shattering event called void metal. The metal is called void metal, not the event. It had properties that twisted the laws of physics and reality. The disease mutated the children. They were still technically alive, but they were unable to function properly in society. They they could still interpret stimulus, they just couldn't talk or they didn't move much. And dear Lord, it would be a hard time getting them to eat by themselves. Basically, autism on steroids. I mean, I joke about it, but like, yeah, there are some people who are so autistic they can't even eat for themselves. It's freaky, man. Okay. The cure or a cure was developed. The cure, in quotations, was to use CRISPR to inject animal DNA that the children react to, as two things had been observed while studying for a cure. that the children of animals who were nearby the factories working with void metal did not have the disease, and that whenever the children were in the presence of animals, they would react and attempt to be near said animal. By the way I'm doing this has no basis in science, and this is not how CRISPR works. You can't manipulate DNA after it's already been formed. That's not how CRISPR works. But we ball. Um, Scientifically speaking, it should not have worked, and yet somehow it did, returning sentience and intelligence to the children. Not only that, it was discovered that each child's mutation was resulted in a power unique to each of them, which is why each of them were drawn to their specific animal donors. The program in charge of the testing and the cure was known as Castle of Flowers, as their hope was not only to cure the cognitive decline of these children, but also have them bloom into the next evolution of humanity and lead normal humans into a golden age in harmony with nature. There was a problem with this vision, however, as in order to fund these experiments and the program itself, they had to work with governments for financing and aid. Governments who had a vastly different view of these children and their futures. Yeah, I'm going with the government would absolutely abuse and experiment slash uh exploit children who had abilities for their own gain. Because let's be 100% honest, every government would do that, especially the US. Let's be like blatantly clear. Like, we have some very terrible people in our government who view it as an okay thing to use people as test subjects and or to just violate their human rights. Yeah, look into how the legal system treats people with disabilities. It's fucking insane. Especially with mental disabilities. Whew. Okay. Na- 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 na. After all, with their abilities and drastically different bodies from your average person, they could be perfect for all sorts of jobs. And they could write laws in a way that so that not only could they use them as cheap labor, but to incentivize their people to not riot by making laws that pay people for taking in these animal workers and making sure they actually work, though there are no actual protections for these workers. Again, everything could have been fine if that was the end of it. If they had just stopped and said, all right, this is as far as we need to go, they could have been corrected after some riots and things could have moved on. But they didn't. Instead, they decided to do three things that sealed the future of this world, or sealed the future this world now lives in. They took these children from their families, spouting some lines about how they need time to adjust to their new lives, how they will need training and observation to make sure they won't hurt anyone by accident, and about how the process will be better if they were with others like them. The second thing was that these took these children and gave them an education that even religious extremists would call unethical. And by the way, religious extremists are probably some of the most unethical and crazy people to ever live. All dependent on what job you would be good at, keeping in mind that the youngest was 5 when this started. I mean, I've edited it. I'm going back and forth on what I want the youngest age to be when I start this. I'm thinking like having the oldest being 5 or 7. I may not be a mentally put together person. I may be a wee bit messed up in the head, but it's okay. It's fine. I mean, acceptance is the first part of growth, right? And third, not all of the jobs were exactly legal. After all, there would be uses for animals in all sorts of fields, especially ones related to warfare and espionage. By the way, I don't really say anything about it in this little concept thing. Um, so one of the things I heavily implied about Steve, when I first wrote him and Dante, and it's the main reason that he was one of the villains of the Castle of Flowers. Um, I basically heavily implied that he was forced to do things no child should ever be forced to do with people older than them. Yes, I basically made a government slash scientific operation into a mini version of Epstein Island, except worse. Um, I'm probably more than likely gonna rewrite that because, dear God, I didn't realize at the time how messed up that was, and I 100% chalked that up due to me just not being as socially aware as I am now. For years, it looked like these governments got their way. The first three generations were being raised and indoctrinated as they planned, or so they thought. In reality, behind closed doors, several of the educators and scientists were working to undermine the horrible lives planned for these kids. The kids themselves were learning and understanding things such as how to think for themselves, what to do in life, all while acting whenever those not in the revolution were around, as if everything was going to according to plan by government standards, with children being punished harshly for the slightest mistake, children in the more extreme jobs being forced to do things that no kid should ever go through, and the children were all hearing a voice that connected each of them together, a voice they had heard all their lives. I am really bad at, like, summarizing things. I've just realized. But basically, the be the creation of void metal on Earth is not coincidence or by cosmic fate. It was a deliberate choice by a being I will explore more later. But this being is connected to the children because they were contaminated and born contaminated by the void metal, and it viewed these children as its own and had basically sent the void metal and all of its advancements into science as a test for humanity, a test which humanity had failed horribly due to the actions, uh, not only due to the actions of the human leaders and scientists, but also the apathy of most humans towards the plight of the anima, which is what the children are called. After the revolution had succeeded, and word what the Castle of Flowers really did behind closed doors. Speaking of, after the revolution succeeded, it split into three camps: naturalists, cohabitation, and supremacists. The naturalists are anima who decided to hide themselves from humans as best they can and live among animals and nature. And they are often hard to find unless you know where to look or are with someone from the revolution. Basically, very antisocial, and they only really interact with people like them, especially those who they remember from the revolution. Cohabitation are anima and scientists slash educators who reintegrated into human society, though the anima had to hide their trace and be paired with the scientist who creates a new identity for them, living their lives while also keeping them safe from the themselves and others safe from the third group, that group being the supremacists. Basically, the idea is that these cohabitation anima are trying to blend in with normal humans, especially since some religious groups feel that they shouldn't be alive due to them basically being science experiments, which I don't blame the I just realized I'm writing this. I can absolutely blame them. But what I mean is, I think it's a very natural response to hide oneself, to keep oneself safe from threats who think that you deserve to die because of something completely out of your control. But the supremacists are anima and a few of the educators and scientists who believe the anima are superior due to their connection to the void metal and their abilities, essentially the next stage of humanity. They also believe that the human race needs to be cold and put through the same horrors they went through, all through the form of deadly situations disguised as games. Deciding that humans who survive them, whether through luck, bronze, or brain, deserve to be part of their new utopia, though they are displeased with the interference of their games by the cohabitation faction, and as a whole have decided to include them into their next biggest game yet. Another reason that this faction is so zealous is due to the entity behind everything, basically giving them its approval and even plans to aid them with this newest series of games known simply as the Pruning Project. Now, I haven't expanded a whole lot because most of my writing was just getting the basic concept down and fixing it, and it looks like I'm going to have to fix it a bit more. Now, another part of how I write is I have a really hard time on not only summarizing but on expanding upon ideas when I think them up. So what I've been doing is I've been using DeepSeek to help with that. I do not use it to write for me entirely. I just use it to help expand on the things I'm thinking about, and I write them not only myself, but also in my own way of writing. But so I decided that the name of the entity would be the gardener, for example. Oh, the reason why is that the whole idea is, alliteration with castle of flowers blooming, and the fact that the void metal is sort of like seeds sown into the ground to see what trees bloom from this basically jump starting of technology, because the void metal didn't just corrupt the DNA of the parents and the kids. It The reason it was being mined was its properties allowed basically huge leaps in scientific advancement all across the world. And another thing is that um the entity, like the disease itself, one of the things just from having my ideas expanded upon by DeepSeek, one of the things that I'm bouncing around is the idea that the CRISPR cure wasn't supposed to happen, and the fact that it did defies all logic and like sanity, because the disease wasn't meant to just be a disease, it was meant to be a way of transformation. The disease was supposed to turn the kids into these beings that the gardener could communicate with and use them essentially as a bridge to humanity. To humanity. But with the scientists coming up with the CRISPR cure before the kids were ready, it sort of interrupted the process. It not only changed their bodies, gave them the traits and often attributes of their like animal host DNA. It also somewhat stunted the abilities they were supposed to have. And instead of getting angry, the gardener decides to see how this goes, to see whether or not humanity really deserved this gift in the first place. And as you could kind of guess from the basic concept, they did horribly. And the entity was pissed. Because after a few years of viewing these kids, of interacting with them and learning their likes, their dislikes, their abilities, and seeing how they think, it came to love them, much like a parent loves a child. Now, I would like you to tell me, what parent would ever be okay with their children being turned into weapons, into low cost labor, into less desirable uh workers of a sort? No parent would be okay with that. The problem is that the gardener can't really interfere with reality that often. If it did, if it just did whatever it wanted, it could risk collapsing our world, our reality, our universe, and in the process, hurting and killing its children. So, but yeah, the from the first event in October 14th, 1978, the CRISPR cure doesn't happen until 1985. at least that's where I'm planning it. I may change it. We'll see how I feel. I also may need to. I'm probably gonna get in because I still have a Discord with some of the old Castle of Flower members. I may get with them and hash out how I would like to have these powers work out. Because I don't want like a basic power system, but also the problem is I don't want something too complicated. Oh dear. Been talking about it and I've only gotten through 45 minutes of this. Let's see. What I might do is hold on. Let's put up Spotify. Let's see if I can play something. Okay, no. So what I might do is add a audio. No, here's what I'll do. Because I have a thing where I don't talk while I write, and I want to put on some music for y'all, but the problem is like I can't really figure it out. So I'm gonna just have to talk while I write. So, so observatories or Tories? I'll write it like this. Yeah, I was doing research when I well, I forgot to close it. The tabs at least. Oh yeah, this is a game that's not on my YouTube list, but it is on my like personal play list. And Other Side is a really good game, but it's it's a roguelike game, so where am I? But yeah. Oh God. See, this is what happens when I don't look at my screen while I'm typing. I guess we could also look at my other stories. So this is gonna be messy. So Kalos's story, yeah, as you could see, there a lot of this was like based on like D&D. So yeah, this is gonna be fun to explain. If you're wondering what these names are and what the numbers mean, um, so the names are the different deities I came up with for this world. And the numbers, so you know how there are 22 different major tarot arcana in the tarot deck? Yes, it's 22, even though there's 21. It ends at 21. It's 22 because of the number 0. Well, what I did when creating these gods was I basically used an online tarot deck thing and based them off of the cards that I pulled. They're not necessarily in this order. So basically, this story is a fantastical story that shows that how I view the world, which, oh, it's not going to be pretty. It is a fictional story. It has magic, mythology, and it is heavily inspired by TTRPGs and tokusatsu shows such as Super Sentai, Ultraman, and Kamen Rider. Uh, it is also a bit inspired by Ruby, and by that I mean that literally the first part of this story that I have planned out in my head is that the main character goes to a school to learn how to hunt monsters. And I guess there are a lot of stories like that, but Kalos is forced to go because technically what I'll get into it, but technically what he's doing is illegal. He is a crime boy without realizing he is a crime boy. But starting off, there are no pure humans in this world. The only sentient species are a race called Zoanthri, which is this world's word for demi-humans, a term for humanoid species who have the traits, instincts, and abilities of animals. Another thing that makes this world special is that there are 12 major gods, with 11 of them sealed away and asleep, while the first goddess, Chaothelia, is walking around with roughly 75% of her power sealed away due to a disagreement between her and the other gods, which led to the other major gods creating the magic system for this world's mortals, which is known as the Soul Gem system, and their slumber in order to not only power it, but sleep until the ones Hemerophanes saw are ready to achieve their destiny. The way the system works is that every fully mortal child is born with the soul gem, which fully appears on the person's chest when they turn 6 and is determined by their core personality trait. And it chooses their class, passives, and a whole lot more. The system was based on the inherent abilities of Calothelia's descendants. For context, the layout looks like something like this. You have your identity, your age, your species and trait, your soul gem, the name of it, your passive, your level, your HP calculation, your MP calculation, general skill affinities, general abilities, class, subclass, class mechanics, class skills, class abilities, armor description, HP, MP, MP recovery, HP recovery rate. Attack, defense, strength, intelligence, wisdom, perception, charisma, dexterity, endurance, and luck. So, this is known as the status. This is what appears in front of someone when they check their status using their ideology. Oh, is it ideology or... Oh, God. Okay, maybe just that I forgot to change it from ideology gem. Yeah, I tend to forget to change things sometimes. It's not pretty. This is what appears in front of someone when they check their status using their soul gem. I'm going to explain it here. Identity. This refers not to just the person's name, but also their gender, orientation, affiliations, relationships, and ancestry. Age. This refers to a person's physical age, their date of birth, and the date of their soul gem emergence. Zoanthropy species and traits. As stated above, zoanthropy is the general term for the intelligent mortals of this world, of which there are many subspecies with different animal relations which determine your traits and instincts. These are actually important since certain animal traits actually have abilities which will be listed here as well. Oh, let me get a drink of water because this is going to be a mouthful. Also, I do apologize. Give me 1 second. I need a cough. Alright, perfect. Soul Gem. Every child is born with the shards of a soul gem, which grow into a physical representation of their future driving personality trait when they turn 6. Well, it is their driving personality trait, and they will have a pull to act in a way that fulfills the trait of their soul gem. It does not mean these people are simple, and in fact have more complex personalities and thoughts than their ancestors did before the system ever had. Oh, more complex personalities and thoughts than their ancestors before the system ever had. This did. Now, the trait of your soul gem determines a lot about your future capabilities and abilities. It determines what class you inherently have, the name and ability of your passive, your general skill affinities, what your armor can look like beyond its basic description, and both your initial stats and how they level up. Something that is sadly too common is that several people in positions of power still, whether for political, personal, or racial reasons, believe and spout the old propaganda that a zoanthropy's trait determines one's a zoanthropy's species traits determines one's soul germ trait and class, and thus only certain species should be allowed to use their God's given gift, even despite all the research pointing to one's environment, upbringing, and mentality at the time of emergence being the actual factors. Ironically, this old ideology, which bastardizes the old teachings of the gods before they fell asleep, is most concentrated in the three most religious, some would even say zealous, countries in this world, those being Osmos, Zephyros, and Shoal. And these countries have the most restrictive laws when it comes to who is allowed to use their soul gem and thus even apply to be an adventurer. Now, here's the thing. Most people will not be adventurers. Not everyone wants to be one, and I'll get into what adventurers do, although you could probably hazard a guess. Like, a lot of Zoanthri go through their lives without actively using their soul gem for their job. The only ones that really do are guards, mercenaries, and adventurers. Now, passive. Every soul gem has a passive, an ability that they always have access to that has an effect on either their stats, their physical capabilities, class abilities, or weapons. These passives can be separated into two groups, actives and triggers. Active passives are always on no matter what, and usually affected an adventurer's weapons or their class abilities, whereas triggers have conditions that have to be met in order to be used, and usually affect an adventurer's stats or their physical capabilities temporarily. Level. An adventurer's level is a numerical representation of an individual's experiences, not just combat-based experiences, but all of them. As you live, go through different challenges, and interact with others, you gain experience which will increase your level and boost your stats. HP calculation determines your HP and is determined by chance and your class. The calculation for level 1 is as follows. Class starting HP plus endurance modifier. The calculation how much you gain upon every level up is as follows. The number you roll on your HP die plus your endurance modifier. Yes, this is basically ripped from D&D. The same goes for your MP calculation. However, instead of you using your endurance modifier, it uses your intelligence modifier. Skills are tasks or training methods that are split into two categories. Class skills and general skills. We're going to focus on general skills here, which are skills that anyone can learn, such as cooking, swordsmanship, navigation, and cleaning. I will add a list of all general skills later down the line. Every soul gem trait has affinities with each of the different general skills, going in order from S, A, B, C, D, E, and F. With S being +3 affinity and F being -3 affinity. General ability. Much like the skills, there are technically four categories of abilities, which are techniques developed by leveling up one's general skill associated with the ability. The first two categories are, of course, general abilities and active or class abilities, which you understand the gist of already. The other two categories, however, are active and reactive, much like passives. Active abilities have to be actively triggered and tend to be combat-oriented, whereas reactive abilities are abilities that are triggered by meeting specific requirements. Fooch. Every time you use a skill and are practicing with it, you gain a base of 4 points towards that skill, with it increasing or decreasing depending on your affinity. There are 9 grades when it comes to skills, those being S, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, starting at 0 with grade H. Each increase in grade requires 50 points, reaching a total of 400 at grade S. Each grade, besides grade H, will come with its own ability or bonus relating to the skill, each increasing in power and utility. I would give examples, but I'm really, really bad at that. I'm bad at a lot of things. A person's class is essentially a common description of the abilities and role of the individual, and each class has their own abilities and restriction. The base classes are as follows: martial artist, barbarian, tactician, inquisitor, scholar, scientist, psychic, gunslinger, druid, animist, cleric, avatar, entertainer. I'm pretty sure I changed these. Oh, maybe I didn't. Yeah, I changed some of them. Anyway, all right, back over here. Uh, but yeah, basically a bunch of different classes. These are actually based on classes from Pathfinder. All classes have what's known as a subclass, a specialization for each individual that are usually determined when you get your soul gem. Through though some classes have other requirements for subclasses. I'm not sure if I even keep subclass. Hold on. I'm probably gonna rewrite a lot of this when I get back to it. Anyways, back. Oh, would you stop taking me back over here? Subclasses, class mechanics, resources, quirks, and effects that are unique to each class. Class skills, basically general skills, however, they are specific for each class in the character selections for each class, and we'll expand upon them there when we reach them. These abilities are linked to class skills and gain experience, both with use and with by training the associated class skill. Armor description. This is what your armor looks and feels like, including the color, shape, material, and style. Basically, whenever you use your soul gem abilities, you don a form of armor. It could change what it looks like, but it's a form of armor essentially that encases you while you're using your abilities. The only ones who can use abilities while not having their armor on are descendants of Calothelia. Because they don't have the restrictions of the class system. Okay, let's actually get into this. So, descendants of Calothelia's descendant system. The descendants of Calothelia, however, are always half god, and therefore, instead of connecting to the system to use magic, they have magic of their own with their own rules, though they are very similar to the system being based on them. For context, here's what that looks like, and don't worry, I'll explain it all. Hold on, I'm just scrolling down to see. Yep, I didn't finish this. Yeah, I need to rewrite this entire thing. Oh boy. Well, most of it at least. Identity. This refers not just to the person name, but their gender, orientation, affiliations, relationship, what class or two classes they emulate, and what family branch of Calophilia's line they belong to. I'm having it planned so that there are four branch families. Age. This refers to a descendant's age, date of birth, and the emergence of their powers. Demigod concept. Each descendant has a concept that is intertwined with their powers and the themes of their forms, with the concept being twisted while in their Ravager form. The Ravager form was basically me, like, originally it was going to be like the Berserk forms from Kamen Rider, but then I decided to do some fun stuff with it in my head, and I will change that at some point. Concept traits. Much like zoanthropy traits, these are traits that are symbolically tied to the descendants' concepts and act as sign of their divine heritage to those who know the meaning of them. Untransformed concept ability. Each descendant has an ability tied to the concept that they can only use while untransformed, or while in their Ravager form, in which case it will be much stronger than normal. Transformation device. Each descendant has a transformation device which is split into two parts: a belt, wrist, chest, bicep mounted device, and a gimmick that connects to the theme of the descendant. Level. A descendant's level is a numerical, it's basically the same as a normal level. Here on, it's basically the same thing. However, they do not have class abilities. It's because they don't have a class. So instead, they have this. Form themes. Each descendant has access to many forms, each one having their own abilities. The one thing tying them all together being the descendant's theme. A theme is basically the thing that not only ties each form's motif together, but also ties them back to the descendant's concept. Form obtainment. Each descendant has a particular way they obtain their forms that ties back to their theme and concept, but they usually come from one of three ways: an understanding of their concept and theme, indulgence in their concept slash theme, and bonding with outside forces related to their concept slash theme. This base form. This is the first form the descendant obtains besides the Ravager form. It is their most used form and the one they are most comfortable with. They also, the way I'm having it planned out in my head, they're also going to tie into the concept and theme of the forms, and also, more importantly, the base forms are essentially weaker versions of the Ravager form. I'm going to rework the Ravager form because it changed in my head. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I changed it. Yeah. Okay. Would you stop putting me all the way back here? Jesus, mother, tap dancing Christ. Okay. Base form ability. The ability of their base form that makes them formidable. Additional forms. These are additional forms that the descendant can use each with their own capabilities. Additional form abilities, same as with base form. Ravager form. I'm going to change it when I start working on this part again, but every descendant has what's known as a Ravager form, a form which takes over when they lose themselves either to specific thoughts or stimulus relating to a negative interpretation of their concept or something opposing it. Their godly powers latching onto these thoughts before spiraling out of the control and mutating their form to fit their new twisted desires. What I'm thinking of changing it is instead of it being bad, the Ravager form would simply be a there would be a stimulus that's like I want to make it so that there's a stimulus that's unique to each Calyophilia descendant, but that would be a bit too much. So what I think it might be, it essentially is going to be like having a panic attack on steroids, where the Ravager form is basically what happens when they lose what little control over their godly power that they have, and is usually triggered by a huge amount of negative emotional stimuli, or if the descendant is in a situation that is detrimental to their life. With the form tying back into the concept. Like, one of the concepts I have an idea to do is, like, for Kalos, his whole thing is going to be masks and, like, acting out characters. I really have to rewrite this entire thing because how I think about this story has changed a lot. But Ravager Arcana, the Ravager Forms Arcana is always different from the Descendants and is negative. What I mean is when you're reading Tarot card Arcana, the meaning of the card changes depending on what position it is. If it's upright, usually it's a positive meaning. If it's in reverse, it's usually negative. uh Ravager form ability. This is usually either a more advanced and powerful version of the Descendants' untransformed ability or something relating to their defeat. Again, gonna have to rework that. Ravager forms trigger slash personality. This refers to the type of thoughts or stimulus that trigger the form, while the form's personality should be opposed to the Descendants' usual demeanor. HP, MP, HP recovery rate. This is, yeah, same, usual. Oh, I need to really rework all this. So I think this is just a mess. Yeah, when I get a chance, like either next month or something, I need to really rework this whole thing. Ugh, it's a mess. Then we have MC. So, basic concept for this story. The main presence of the story is that when humanity was young, and started creating religions, cults, gods, monsters, and heroes to explain the phenomena occurring in the world around them, which had solidified in the myths we know today. They had inadvertently created a world parallel to the world they lived. one where these myths exist, known as the divine realm. For generations, anything that happened in the human realm started to affect the divine realm, and something shocking happened when divine beings started to get irritated as worship of them waned, and what few worshippers they had were starting to fight each other, which led to one of the worst discoveries that the beings from the divine realm could break free from their myths and descend as abominations, the worst of which being abomination gods and heroes. The reason why these are bad is because, as per usual, when they're breaking away from their myths and becoming abominations, it's like Champion. If you've ever seen Champion, it's really good anime. It's kind of where I got inspired, besides Percy Jackson. Um, when these abominations appear, what happens is that not only are they wreaking havoc on the earth and the human population, but they are literally starting to lose themselves. And if an abomination is on this world for too long, really bad things start to happen. I haven't quite figured it out yet. But to combat the abominations, the creator gods of each religion proposed the demigod system, where divine beings are allowed to find and have children with mortals in the mortal world, though they are not permitted to stay long, since doing so can turn them into abominations. It's literally dependent on how much time you're there. The reasoning behind this is that a mortal would be able to stay in the mortal realm without also becoming an abomination to stop an abomination. Example of the dangers of abominations is the Great Chicago Fire in 1871, an event which was caused by Surt the fire giant descending to burn the city due to an argument with Odin. It was, funnily enough, a child of Boreas who cooled Surt's flames in the end. Now, when a demigod is born, they are automatically, yes, this is another system world. They are automatically given a status system which only themselves and other demigods can see actively. And even then, they only truly awaken after a demigod encounters their first abomination. The system looks like this: name, level, HP calculation, SP calculation, divine parent, aspect, pillar category, aspect ability, skills, weapons, armaments, demigod form, HP, SP, attack, defense, special attack, special defense, speed, intelligence, endurance, strength, charisma, dexterity, wisdom. Oof, what time are we at? Hour 22. Let's get through this. Level. A demigod's level is the culmination of the experience they went through since awakening to their parentage and a sign of how strong they are. HP calculation determines the amount of HP you have. Starting calculation is as follows: HP die plus endurance. Level up HP is calculated by number rolled on the HP die plus endurance. SP calculation determines the amount of SP you have, and the calculations are the same as HP, just using wisdom instead of endurance. Divine parent. Every demigod has a parent who hails from the divine realms. Typically, these parents are gods, goddesses, heroes, or similar mythological figures who represent and encompass one or a set of domains relating to an aspect of the world, though on occasion, specific monsters will have children. What I mean by specific monsters are usually it's going to be monsters that have actual names. Like the Minotaur is named Asterion, if I remember correctly. Or Medusa, or Typhon. He is technically a monster. An aspect is the concept or concepts, or divine domain / domains a demigod inherits from their divine parent. Each aspect has their own ability, changing between different divine parents, even if they have the same aspect. And each aspect has their own stats, which go into determining the capabilities of their users. Pillar categories are groups for demigods with parents who have similar roles and are descriptors rather than specific aspects. The different categories are as follows: Pillar of Foundation, Pillar of the Wanderer, Pillar of the Abomination, Pillar of Monsters. There, so it's not abomination as in the monsters that are caused when divine beings descend. I will have to rename it, but by abomination, what I mean is like devils, demons, things that sin or cause others to sin. Probably pillar of the sinner would be better. Okay. Pillar of monsters, pillar of the psyche, pillar of the wild, pillar of the sea, pillar of the sky, pillar of the forge, pillar of entertainment, pillar of space, pillar of life, pillar of the afterlife, pillar of order, pillar of warfare, and pillar of civilization. Keep in mind the same divine parent can be part of different pillars. God, my throat. I may not be able to do a second video because of how scratchy my throat's getting. The pillar of foundation is represented by divine parents who are either universe creators or as the physical representation of fundamental concepts such as time, space, sky, ocean, death, life, rebirth, or other such concepts. And that being the deity of a fundamental concept and being that concept itself are two entirely different things. Usually, what I'm talking about are primordials, basically beings that not only guide or control a concept, but are fundamentally that concept itself. Like, you can't separate the two. Pillar of the Wanderer. This pillar is represented by divine parents who are associated with safe travels, crossroads, choices, and forms of travel. Pillar of the Sinner. This pillar is represented by divine parents who are associated with seduction, debauchery, temptation in all its forms, trickery, chaos, and divine parents who are monsters that are children of a divine being. Think the Chimera, or Cerberus would actually be a better representation. Pillar of Monsters. This is represented by divine parents who are monsters or associated with the parents, or with being the parents of monsters. Basically, these are more general monsters, or are parents of monsters. Think your Typhon would technically be under the pillar of monsters. So would Echidna. You could say that Loki's wife could also be under the category of pillar of monsters because she did give birth to Hel, Jormungandr, and Fenrir. Pillar of the Psyche. This pillar is represented by divine parents with domains over or are associated with mental concepts such as illusions, wisdom, knowledge, emotions, dreams, and madness. Pillar of the Wild. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with nature, food, hunting, trees, mountains, groves, the season, the earth, and animals. Pillar of the Sea. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with the sea and storms that reside or start in them, abyss, rivers, streams, lakes, rain, ice, and water in general. Pillar of the Sky. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with the sky, air, wind, storms that don't start in the sea, lightning, thunder, electricity, and clouds. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with the crafts, metal, blacksmithing, fire, mountains, riches hidden within the earth, volcanoes, and those both strong in body or mind. What I mean by that last one are your Sun Wukongs, your shoot, trying to think of somebody else. Buddha would also could technically be under the pillar of the forge. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with the arts and the crafts, intoxication, joy, games, competition, and basically anything entertaining. This pillar is represented by the pillar of space. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with planets, moons, space, solar bodies, and other phenomena associated with the stars. Pillar of life. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with nature, birth, marriage, emotion, growth, rebirth, the day, and seasons. Pillar of the afterlife. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with death, the afterlife, magic, crossroads, psychopomps. A psychoponth is basically a god or a entity who takes someone or a dead spirit where it's supposed to go, but they aren't necessarily associated with any death god, or are not themselves a death god. Rebirth, passage from life to death, judgment of souls, reincarnation, and the night. Pillar of order. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with order, purity, uniformity, law, and devotion. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with war, martial prowess, battle strategy, military leadership, conquest, military instruction. Pillar of civilization. This pillar is represented by divine parents associated with politics, law, fairness, community, organization, kings, queens, lords, ladies, and technology. Aspect ability. The innate ability given by the demigod's aspect, changing depending on their divine parent. Skills. Skills are spells and physical abilities that demigods specific to their parents that they can learn as they level up, while exploring the expanse, or weapons. While exploring the expanse in the real world, abominations can drop loot, which can be made into weapons or armaments, which have their own stats and can be fused into, or while exploring all this, can be fused into a demigod's form weapon if the type matches. Again, rewrite. I had to do a lot of rewriting, apparently. Armaments. Same with weapons, except they are pieces of armor. Demigod form. This is the form a demigod takes when they are in combat, inspired by their heritage and divine parent, and gives them access to their abilities. HP. This is how much damage you can sustain before you die, the calculation for which is stated earlier in this document. SP. Same thing as HP. Attack. This is the amount of damage you can inflict using physical skills, and the calculation is as follows. Strength or dexterity plus speed. Defense. This is how much you can reduce damage inflicted on you by physical skills, the calculation for which is endurance plus dexterity. Special attack. Same as attack, but instead the calculation is intelligence or charisma plus wisdom. SP, same as defense, but charisma plus wisdom. Speed. This determines the speed of your attacks and your ability to move. It is calculated as follows. Speed equals strength plus dexterity divided by 2. Intelligence. This represents how well you can learn new things and reason with the information at hand. Determines how quickly you can understand and learn new skills, and how much damage you could deal with your magic skills if this is higher than your charisma. Okay, my jaw and my throat are hurting for some reason, so I'm going to end this here. When they feel better, I may. Oh, probably not because I need to record episode 18 for Liza P later. So, we'll see how it goes. Anyways, for now, bye.